I'm the bad guy. I'm the
Hello everyone, we are back. Welcome to Across the Gridiron. I am Matt and I am joined once again by my main man, Eddie Equo. Eddie, my friend, how are you this week?
I'm doing well. I have to say I'm a little bit sore. I went out camping over the weekend, so my body's trying to adjust to the comfort. And I know we were talking about it before we jumped on about camping and the delights and not so delightful aspects of it. And you were like, you're probably not going to try camping. It was my first time of going camping. Went to this place called New Forest in the UK. The kids loved it, but I don't know. I think I need a lot more sleep to recover from the experience.
Absolutely. So if you're watching this and Eddie makes even less sense than usual, that is why. Basically,
Exactly.
absolutely flagging.
Absolutely. But we're here to talk about the NFL. And listen, well, I'm really excited about the topics that we're going to talk about, guys. And if you like what we talk about, please hit that like and subscribe channel. And don't forget, guys, hit that notification because we actually need you guys to do that. It will certainly help us and to keep the content flowing on YouTube.
Absolutely, it's the best way to support the channel, and what a good way to start the week off by complaining about camping and begging for and begging for people to hit the notification button. We really do feel like we are now a proper podcast, and I do feel, Eddie, yeah, we are an NFL podcast. We do talk about American football, and obviously the teams are coming back for preseason, for training camp.
Yeah.
And yet you're the one complaining about sleeping outside in a tent. I think I'd hardly say the struggle is real, Eddie, but
I mean, I don't know if NFL teams are like camping out in tents and all of that.
oh, they're going to be well looked after. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, but you think your body hurts just by sleeping outside. How do you think their bodies are going to feel after like the first couple of
Well,
days of?
I mean, listen, right? A lot of those rookies are signing like big contracts right now. Lots of zeros going to the bank account. I think for all those zeros that are going in, I think there's probably a few people that might take some of that pain to get some more money in the bank. So
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. I think it's worth it. But yeah, let's let's crack on. As you said, there's a few things we want to talk about today. What we're gonna start off today, we're gonna talk about who do we think has been the most disappointing team of 2025. We're going to have a little bit of a retrospective look at last season and look at some of the teams who really disappointed us the most. And then obviously next week, we'll probably look at some of the more positive stories, like who did we feel surprised us the most in 2025. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the hot topic of the week, which is the Tush Push and the fact that that's been allowed back, or basically been allowed to continue for this season. And then finally, we will look at some of the underrated players going into 2025. Let's first of all let's look at some of the most disappointing teams of last season. Now, I said 2025. The way the NFL does it, I suppose it's really 2024.
yeah.
Because that is how they do it. So we are coming into the 2025 season, and last season was 2024. They do like to confuse us. So yes, so just for clarity, we're going to look at some of the disappointing teams of 2024. Now, what got us thinking about this is that Sportsnaut have recently released a list of the teams with the most disappointing off-season of 2025. But what we want to do is take a step back from that and actually look at the whole season of 2024. Who disappointed them as the most, and who's probably got some of the furthest to go to win their fans back for 2025. So, Eddie, I'll come to you on that one. So let's start with the obvious one for you. Who do you think was the biggest disappointment of last season?
I know you're talking about the San Francisco 49ers, right?
Of course, yes, of course.
Of course, it's the Dallas Cowboys. 3, 12, and 5 seasons. We really thought this season was, I'm talking about 2024 season, was the season that we're finally going to do it. We had a division that have the Eagles, Jalen Hurts. We never quite knew Jalen Hurts was going to turn up and all of that. And especially, Eagles had a disappointing 2023 season where they absolutely fell off a cliff. So everyone would think the Cowboys are going to progress from that. And then you also look at who else is in the division. You got the Giants. Everything was going on about Saquon Barkley. He finally went to the Eagles, and we thought Giants are the team that the Cowboys always own, right? And you look at the Commanders, and you didn't know they had a rookie quarterback starting, so you never know how that's going to go. But you will still think to yourself, well, you've got Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, in the Stars in Dallas versus a rookie in the Commanders. Definitely, you've got to be putting the Cowboys off there. It didn't go exactly to plan. And I think this is one of those things, and it happens in our sports here in the UK, soccer, you guys call it the US, where a lot of teams get started with a lot of high expectation, but things like injuries set in and completely derail the season. Look at the Europa League that just happened between Manchester United and Spurs. Two teams that absolutely fell on the cliff. For those of you who don't know, that's just two teams that play in the English Premier League. And traditionally, you always find those teams at the top part of the table. So Dallas, I think, was very disappointing. Dak Prescott obviously got injured. Micah Parsons was also injured as well. There were several injuries to notable players, Marcus Lawrence as well. I would say the Dallas Cowboys were very disappointing last season, especially with the hype, the hope, and expectation coming into 2024. That would be my number one team. I think the team that follows that is going to be the Niners. I think the Niners are, if I'm ranking teams that have had most disappointing season, I think the Niners are up there, right? They're not just, unlike the Dallas Cowboys that haven't gone past the championship games, they had been to the Super Bowl in so many times before then. So they were very, very close, right? And they've gone there with Brock Purdy, who a lot of people are debating whether he's actually a top 10 quarterback or a top 5 quarterback, who just got his money, by the way. So congratulations to Brock Purdy. But they had injuries. Greenlaw was injured. Christian McCaffrey got injured as well. You had a 49ers absolutely drop off a cliff. That must have been a shock to the system for a lot of the fans, a lot of the players. And I think my third team that I'll be looking to sort of say had a disappointing season is going to be the Jets. Because the Jets had a decent team, they had a good defense, they had good players in there, and everyone said that all that they were missing was a quarterback. And here comes Aaron Rodgers, a guy that has been a excellent quarterback in this league. He's gone to a Super Bowl, he's won a Super Bowl, he's been MVP of the season so many times in terms of productivity, touchdowns, all of those things. You would think inserting him in a team like the New York Jets would actually take them off. It did the complete opposite. I think we had throughout the season, lots of turmoil going on, especially, when the first season that he got to the Jets, he was injured. So no one could actually see him play, and everyone held out judgment. Aaron Rodgers into the Jets because we've never seen him. He played what was it 4 snaps or so before he got that injury, and then he was gone for the whole year. So you think he's come back in, but you started seeing the signs, right? People were talking about he not going for off-season training. He's not really doing some of the things that you expect veterans to do. So I think the Jets would have been very, very disappointed how their season went. Of course, that led to the coach getting sacked as well. I think that they would be thinking to themselves, can we breach that gap this season? So I think going into 2025, you've got a Cowboys who are looking for a bounce back. Brock Purdy's just got his deal. For the 49ers will be looking to have a much better and improved season. I think the Jets will be trying to get on the winning side, of the record this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough for the Jets. I mean, obviously they could get a winning record, but you've got in that division, you've got the Bills are by far and away the best team in that division. They're going to have a massive drop off to not be in the playoffs this season, and Miami should hopefully be stronger than they were last season if we keep Tua fit all season. For me, I think one of the biggest disappointments of last year were the Bengals. Coming into the season, when you had Joe Burrows and the likes of Jamar Chase, they were talked about as potential not only playoff, almost guarantees for the playoffs. A lot of people were talking about potential Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah.
And, they didn't even make the dance, let alone get to the Super Bowl. So the time, if you're someone like Joe Burrow, who's clearly an elite level quarterback, you've only got that small playoff window.
Yeah.
You've got to wonder, someone with his level of talent, how long he's willing to stay for a team who is underperforming season in, season out, or underachieving season in and season out. So for me, they were one of the biggest disappointments. I mean, yeah, look, you mentioned the Cowboys, you mentioned the Jets and the 49ers. That all makes sense. I think that
Just on the Bengals for a second, do you think, right, there's any correlation between paying Jamar Chase? Because remember, going into that season, he hadn't gotten paid, and CD Lamb hadn't gotten paid as well. Do you think that bears any context to, how the Bengals performed? The fact that they had one of their most important players going into the season, not being paid, and you've got all that talk and all of that going in. Does that help or hurt?
Oh, it's definitely not gonna. It's definitely not gonna help things, is it? I think you go into preseason, you want to have all your pieces in order, in place, don't you? Right, especially your star players. And if you've got question marks over one of your key players like Jamar Chase, he's not getting paid, he's not happy. It doesn't create that stability that I think every team sort of strives for, and it creates division in a locker room. So that is obviously going to be a hindrance. But regardless of that, then they still underperformed, right? And I think that it could have started all the way back there, as you mentioned, and they are a team who are going to be who will be under pressure to make drastic improvements coming into 2025. The other one I want to mention, who disappointed with, was the Bears. Now, again, the Bears, a lot of people talk them up as potential playoff contenders. Yes, they had Caleb Williams, huge amount of hype.
Number one pick.
Exactly, number one pick. But this last season was supposed to be the season that they go back to the playoffs, right? And there's still plenty of reason for the fans to be optimistic. And I think one of the biggest issues they had was their coach, Matt Eberflus. That's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah, Cowboys coach now.
Yeah, Cowboys coach. There you go. You're bringing in all the quality there. Absolutely. There was that really bad timeout decision, if I remember rightly, back against the Lions. There were just too many questionable decisions. This is a coach who kind of underperformed, and because of that, I think the team underperformed as well. But they were a team who should have been chasing playoffs. But again, we talked about this when we were talking about our draft review. The Williams now has some weapons. They has to be able to utilize it. The Bears have to now be pushing for the playoffs. And we've seen this with the Jaguars, who drafted Trevor Lawrence first. And Trevor Lawrence was the hot prospect of that draft. Everyone's saying this guy is a potential Super Bowl winner. But it goes on and on. The team they don't help this. They don't help the QB. They don't give him enough weapons. They don't give him enough protections. They don't make the playoffs. They don't make the playoffs. And then also you just fall into that habit or that vicious cycle of just underperforming and just not living up to the hype.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens to those two teams this season, right? Because you look at the Bengals, they decided that they have to pay T. Higgins, right? They've gone into this, season making sure that all their players are right. Now there's still the question of one of their defensive players who, hasn't gotten paid. Hendrickson, I think, hasn't been paid. So, there's questions about that. But I think that, they'll be looking to bounce back on the back of that. And Caleb Williams, I mean, there were some stories coming out about the fact that he used to watch film by himself and he wasn't getting enough coaching guidance while in his rookie season, which is kind of ridiculous, right? Imagine, starting off, a new job straight from university, and your boss is like, here you go. Right. Look at all of that stuff that you need to do. No guidance whatsoever, no expectations being set. Um, Although I find that story very hard to believe, but it was making the rounds, for a while. So maybe there is some truth to it. And the Jaguars, right? I think we've talked about this a lot of times on this show about, quarterbacks needing a lot of support. And I was thinking about it today and I was watching some clips and I was like, you watch some quarterbacks and I was watching this game between the Baltimore Ravens and the Eagles. And there were some catches. There was one particular catch that Lamar Jackson made, and Mark Andrews caught that ball, in the end zone. And that was a ridiculous catch that he made. But for me, that catch was all about the wide receiver, not really about the quarterback. It was about the wide receiver. And it just tells you that, quarterbacks need help to make them look good, right? You've got to have some kind of weapon to do something. So it'll really be interesting now that Trevor Lawrence has now got Travis Hunter, going into the Jaguars, how that changes the fortunes for the Jaguars. Because I think that now you can say he's legitimately got a wide receiver that is going to be a threat, a true number one wide receiver. And does that do the same thing that it did for, when Stephon Diggs went to the Bills? What happened to Josh Allen, how Josh Allen took off. And people might forget, before Stephon Diggs went there, people were like, well, is Josh Allen, can he really do it? Stephon Diggs went a true elite receiver, and Josh Allen took off. Dak Prescott, same thing. Amari Cooper goes to the Cowboys. Dak Prescott, takes his game to a different level. Maybe we can see that with Trevor Lawrence.
I hope so. I hope so. A quarterback is only as good as the protection he's got and the weapons he has, right? So that's our view on some of the most disappointing teams of the 2024 season. Obviously, they've got they have some ground to make up as we come into 2025. If you guys watching, who are your biggest disappointments in 2024? Have we completely missed a point on a lot of these, which I'm sure you probably think that we have? And put in the comments who you think are the most disappointing as well. So that'll do for part one. In part two, we'll be back with the biggest story of the week and the Tush Push. Welcome back to part two of Across the Gridiron. So, Eddie, the biggest story of this week in the NFL is the infamous Tush Push, as it's so delightfully called. Now, this is a move that's been popularized more recently by the Philadelphia Eagles, also known as the brotherly shove. And it has caused some controversy. So for those who don't know, this is where basically if a team is maybe 1 yard from the down line or 1 yard from the goal line, they'll basically just put all their players in a bit, basically completely pack the line and a big push, quarterback sneak effectively, and they get first downs. Or in some cases, they'll get they'll get first downs or they'll get touchdowns, right? There was a big call with some teams, and I think it was proposed by the Green Bay Packers, who actually want to ban the tush push. Now, they will cited safety concerns that's
Yeah.
potentially injure players, but this move was completely slapped down, essentially, by the rest of the leagues, and the owners voted to keep it being legal for the 2025 season. So, Eddie, as a lifelong Philadelphia Eagles fan,
Hater.
yeah. So where do you sit on this? Is this a good thing that they keep it in, or is it a bad thing that they've kept it in? Where do you sit on this debate?
I mean, I've gone back and forth on this, and I'm going to try and be objective as I can as a Cowboy fan.
No, you won't.
We always say this thing like, if he's on our team, right? We want the person, and if he's not, we absolutely hate him. And I feel like this is the sort of thing with the tush push, right? If you're the team that has this as a weapon, you're saying this is amazing because you've got 4 downs to get 10 yards, but effectively you can go on first down and know that, yeah, I can take it all the way because if I'm third and two or something like that, or even 4th and 2 or 4th and 3, I can do the tush push. Now, the Eagles have been successful with this play 90% of the time that they've used it, which is an incredibly high number. That's almost like as close to a guarantee as you would have in an NFL game, which is supposed to be as unpredictable with lots of things going on there. I think it's interesting that the Packers actually push for it because when you're watching the game, it just feels unfair, right? Because she's coming, right? You're watching the game and you see the Eagles, they've had a third down play and it wasn't successful and they are 4 and something. And even though they may be in their own behind their 50-yard line, they're going to go for it. And they're almost going to get it. So it feels a little bit unfair. It's like having that, incredible player in your team that you just know that, okay, he can score a goal out of nowhere, right? And you're just cussing it because you're just thinking to yourself, oh, this game we played so well, we limited their chances, and they had one chance and they score and they win the game. That's how a lot of teams must be feeling. But there's another angle to this, right? That I wanted to talk about. Is there a line between innovation, right? In a game. And what I mean by that is, clearly before the Eagles made this popular, I'm sure there were teams that were doing it, but the Eagles said, we are we are going to focus on this play till we are very, very good at it. Now, is that being innovative or is that being exploitative? And I think a lot of the teams, right, would have been thinking that, well, I know I'm going to play the Eagles at some point this year. And it'll be interesting to look at the teams. And I haven't seen the list of all the teams that were pushing against it. But I won't be surprised if a lot of those teams had the Eagles on their roster in 2025, right? And the vote, from what I heard, was 22, right? So, and they needed 24, so they were only out by 2 votes. So there's a lot of people that felt as strongly as the Packers about the tush push. Now, I've heard from the Eagles coming out and saying, this is, the safest thing that has ever happened, in terms of the play and all of that. And of course, you expect them to say that because it's their play. But there are parts of it that you might say, does it feel exciting, as a 50-yard bomb, from a quarterback to a wide receiver, or a one-handed catch by a wide receiver who juggles the ball and then grabs it in the end zone? A running back breaking tackles like we've seen Henry do in some games, literally cannot get him on the ground. Is it as exciting as a play like that? No. Is it effective? Yes. And you might say, as someone that wants to be entertained by an NFL game, do I want to see the tush push that is so predictable when the Eagles do it? Because I feel like I also like that unpredictability of a throw, of a run, where you don't know if they're going to get it. And then maybe they need 5 yards and they get 7, or they need 3 yards and they don't make it, right? You think, okay, surely 3 yards should be easy, and they don't make it. But with the Eagles, if they need 3 yards, they can get 3 yards with the tush push. So does that take away that element of enjoyment, of excitement for fans?
Well, look, it's not the most prettiest play, but it's effective. And my view is be better. Defense, be better, right? Because if you're coming up against the Eagles, they're not going to do it on the first. They're not going to do it at 1st and 10. They're not going to do it on 1st and 20 if there's 2nd and 20. If you manage to get a sack, it's up to you as a defense to stop them, right? And for me, it just seemed like almost a bit of a vendetta against the Super Bowl winning team, personally. And the Eagles have a play that they're very, very effective on. And yeah, if they're 3-3 or 4th and 2 or whatever it is, then yeah, they're going to use it. They're going to get the first down or to get a touchdown. Is it as exciting as giving the ball to Barkley? Is it as good as Hurts putting a 50, 60-yard throw? And of course it's not. But sometimes in football, in any sport, you need to be pragmatic. And they have a play that's incredibly successful for them. So I think what else are you going to do? If you have a team who win a Super Bowl, are you going to say, actually, I tell you what, we're going to stop the quarterbacks running because Lamar Jackson's just too good at it. So we're going to stop the quarterbacks. We're going to stop the quarterbacks running. We're actually going to stop, field goals. What's the point in a field goal? Because they get converted 90% of the time. Oh, let's just ban that. I think as long as it's safe, right, and the data seems to back up that it is a safe move, then I don't know why the league would even consider banning it, because because there's nothing a defense can do about it. If you start to get to the point where they basically can use a tush push from 1st and 10 all the way down and just do 2 or 3 plays, it's an automatic first down, then yeah, that's fair enough. But for me, it's a case of other teams have tried to do it, can't do it successfully as the brotherly shove. Oh, so we're going to throw our toys out the pram and try and get it to ban because there's nothing we can do about it. You can do something about it. Be better. Don't let them get into that position where they can do the tush push in the first place. So, I'm pleased from a sporting perspective that it hasn't been banned, because I just think it'd be remarkable. It would just seem very, very petty. And yeah, that's my take on it.
So 2 things, right? Very interesting, right? If a team actually does that, right? To start off and to push all the way Professor said. But the thing is, if it's this successful, and if people are thinking, like you say, get better at it, teams are going to be thinking, well, hold on a second, right? We're going to get better at it as well. If you and the biggest analogy I can think about, something that we both understand, is like corners and free kicks, right?
Well, I was going to use the analogy of Stoke City and Roy Delap's long throws, right? Because again, for those of you who don't know Premier League football, there was a team from maybe 10 years ago, Stoke City in the Premier League, who had one player called Roy Delap who can literally throw the ball in about 100 yards. It was absolutely insane. He was almost like a quarterback himself. and it was such an effective set piece that a lot of teams, and I think Arsenal, I see Arsenal trying to do is actually would rather give Stoke a corner than a long throw because people just could not defend it. And the conversion rate of that was great. So what are you going to do in that situation? Are you going to ban players from doing long throws because they are quite hard? It is it's up to the defense in that situation to be better, defend it better, put defenders in the right place to deal with it. So the game is cyclical. If people do start doing a tush push from 1st and 10 on their 10-yard line and go all the way to a touchdown, then yeah, there is a sporting spectacle to think about there. But until that happens, I don't see the problem with it.
But what about fairness, right? One team clearly has an advantage, and actually, to be all the way fair about this, because I do remember the Bills did do their version of it, right? They weren't successful in the playoffs, but I think in the regular season, there were a couple of times that Josh Allen basically sneaked the ball in.
Well, yeah, it's a very effective quarterback sneak. If you ban the tush push, you're going to bang the quarterback sneak, right? It gets problematic, and the only reason why people want to ban it is because they can't do it. You talk about fairness. There is no reason why another team can't do the same sort of thing, and apart from the fact strength, the right players to do that move. I mean, like certain teams in the league can't actually do, get Hail Mary touchdowns, for example, because a quarterback doesn't have the arm for that. So is that fair? Is it fair on the rest of the league?
But
because you've got a better quarterback than the other.
But you don't do Hail Mary all the time, unless it's desperate time. Like, people only throw Hail Marys last few seconds of the game. But here is a legitimate weapon that you could be the Eagles, right? It would be so funny, right? With everything that has gone wrong, right? Let's say they play the Packers this season. I think the Packers are on their schedule. So let's say they play the Packers, and the very first play of the game, they just go out and just do a tush push, just to slam it down.
Well, what I want to see is actually when receiving the ball from the kickoff, whoever takes it on special teams takes the ball, and someone's behind him pushing him all the way from the goal line. Like the longest tush push,
just to be petty, right?
Just to be petty.
It's the sort of thing that you would expect. Now, let's be clear: the Packers were not the only team that were against this, right? But they're going to be the face of the tush push resistance, right? And everyone is going to go against them. I mean, would it be so different if it was the Chiefs that had this? If the Chiefs had this, right, a team that say a lot of people kind of love, would people have the same sort of venom as they have against Eagles? It's curious. It was another team that had this as a weapon.
Maybe. I mean, there is nothing special, nothing unique about this play. It's just that one team can do it very, very effectively. There's no secret here. They're not cheating. They're not the Patriots. There's no Deflategate in this sort of situation. It's the fact that you've got one team who have a weapon and they know how to use it, and that weapon is available for the 31 other teams in the league. They just can't do it.
See, that got me thinking, right? You said Deflategate there, and I was thinking about there was this thing that they called the tuck rule. Effectively, it was, I think it came, and I can't remember, and I think it had to do with Tom Brady. I can't remember the game specifically, but it used to happen where a quarterback would sort of fumble the ball, and then it was almost like a pass to a player. And the NFL were like, hey, hold on a second, right? People started bringing into question what legitimately was a pass and what was a fumble of the ball. and they brought in rules to kind of correct that. Um, and we talked about Deflategate, and there were people talking about the fact that Bill Belichick used to find those sort of gray areas within the game to exploit that to the Patriots' advantage. And they would use all these little tricks and little things like that just to get an advantage. So it's probably not the first time in the context of teams, finding an advantage. But I think unlike the other ones, we've talked about, whether it's Deflategate, clearly there was some kind of subversion of the rule, right? Whether it was a slight subversion or it was like a blurred subversion of the rules. Because when I remember that time when the whole Deflategate thing was going on, and that was when I really realized that each team gets like, I think, 5 balls or so, that the quarterback can then, because he needs to get comfortable with the ball. So teams will bring their balls into the game, and then it will get checked and all of that. And then those balls will be the ones that the quarterback is using rather than just random balls that are just given to the quarterback. Because I used to think it was that, just how it is in football where the referee comes with a ball and puts it down, and then that's the ball everybody plays with. But that was when I realized that actually teams come with their balls into the NFL, so the quarterback gets comfortable with it. And I th- I think, right, the Patriots, and this is opening up something that has been in the past, but I don't think that the Patriots are probably the only ones that used to do that. Probably just make the ball feel a little bit more comfortable with their quarterbacks. But again, this is not one of those sort of things. And I'm sure someone is thinking very hard about what kind of rule this is subverting. But I think you're right, until they can come up with some clear rule infringement, it might be very difficult for them to get rid of this.
Yeah, it's a non-starter for me. As I said, there's just as that one kid in the playground who's telling the teacher that this person's spoiling the game because he's doing it better than me. So yeah, I mean, look, but at the end of the day, the tush push remains, and it's up to the other 30 teams to figure out how to defend it. So, you guys watching, what do you think of the tush push? Should it stay? Should it go? Leave your thoughts below. That'll it for part 2. We'll be back in part 3. Welcome back to part 3 of Across the Gridiron. So let's end this week's podcast with another one of the debate. Now, this sort of started last week when we talked about some of the disrespected players in the NFL, which, to be honest, this was just a reason for you to rant and rave about Dak Prescott again. How life is so unfair for poor Dak. Why does nobody love him? So, and this week ESPN highlighted some of the most underrated players in the league, and this started us thinking again. Off the back of what we were talking last week, and then off the back of this article at ESPN, who do we think are the most underrated, not just quarterbacks, but underrated players in the league? And Eddie, you are banned from saying Dak Prescott in this. I wonder, is it possible for the next 10 minutes to have a Cowboys free conversation? So let's see if that is possible. Which player in the league do we think generally does not get the recognition that they deserve?
Yeah, it's always gonna be tough because that he tops this list, but I'm gonna try to talk about someone else who is not named person that we talked about.
Be brave,
Um,
be brave.
I would say that Baker Mayfield is probably underrated. I think with all the drama that he had in the Cleveland Brown, which has been proven to be a place that is a difficult place for even the best sort of players. I think he's been largely underrated. His time in the NFL, excuse me. I think he's a decent quarterback. He's probably not going to be the quarterback that would blow everybody away with every game. But I still think that he's a very good quarterback if he has good weapons. And he's shown that in the Buccaneers, where he's got Mike Evans there, and he's shown to be actually quite a decent quarterback. So I would say that he's definitely underrated in the league. I guess another player, for me, that I think is people don't talk about him as much because of the fact that everyone is attracted to all the other big players, and this is gonna pain me to say this, but I think that Dallas Gordon in the Eagles is probably underrated because everyone's attention clearly last season, was Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. And people forget that sometimes he would get the Eagles out of a hole. And there is a theme about this, about players who quarterbacks will go to, usually tight ends. I think that whole tight end, um, the tight end position in the NFL probably doesn't get a lot of credit other than Travis Kelsey, right? Because he plays for the Chiefs and the Chiefs have been winning and all. But there are a lot of tight ends that do the business. If you look at Ravens, they've got Mark Andrews there, and he makes catches after catches. You've got there's this guy in Laporta as well. He's another tight end for the Vikings, and he makes catches after catches. And people don't talk about them because everyone is arguably, they're talking about Justin Jefferson. He's like the star of the team. But when you want that play where the quarterback is in trouble, more often than not, they go to a tight end. People say that the tight end is like the quarterback's, best friend. So I think the Laporta is actually Lions rather than Vikings. But my point is tight ends don't get a lot of love in the league. And maybe it has to do with the fact that how much they pay them, right? So if you look at all the other positions that get all the money, the pass rushers, quarterbacks, the wide receivers, and then out of that, you've got people who are making significant contributions to the game, probably don't get the same adulation, don't get this, definitely don't get the same amount of money. But you could argue that they contribute, maybe 2 or 3 wins to their teams in every single season. And they don't get a lot of love. So I think people need to probably start giving tight ends a little bit more respect. And I'm so happy about what happened with Derek Henry and with Saquon Barkley. The fact that people were down on running backs for a long time, and people were like, we can always go get a running back from college. And everyone says running back is the most transferable position to the NFL. But Derek Henry showed that if you have a good running back, and you've got a good team, you can go far, right? Saquon Barkley definitely showed you've got a good running back, you've got a good team, you can actually win the Super Bowl. And those two players were rewarded with good contracts in the offseason, making maybe other teams to think, maybe we can do something here. Because everyone says that the league is a copycat league. And you do something in one team, another team is trying to do exactly the same thing. So I think underrated for me, other than Baker Mayfield, maybe I'll just go positions, talk about tight ends and running backs. They probably deserve more love. And I'm sure there are people in the defense side that are saying, gonna say, what about me as well? And I think there are players in the defense that probably, get some love more than others. Like maybe cornerbacks get more love than the safety, right? So you could argue that people that play cornerback or safety could potentially play cornerback as well. But safety don't get as much money as the cornerbacks in the league. So
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think he mentioned the Barkley, Shaquan Barkley, and Derek Henry. The big discussion that we were having last season about the importance of those guys, and it really demonstrated how important that position could be. I mean, Barkley last year was for the Eagles at times, but he was a cheat code in himself, wasn't he? We've just spent probably too long talking about the tush push, and but if you have a weapon like someone like Barkley or Henry, they can go and get you those 1, 2, 3 yards. They can go and get those downs. Um, you know, pretty consistently. So I do think that the running back did become a bit of a lost start before those two sort of came back on the scene. I think that the tight end discussion is an interesting one because for a long time, I mean, obviously, with one of the most dominant franchises in the past few years have obviously been the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think everybody knows who their tight end has been. The fact that probably one of the most well-known pop stars in the world is there supporting him is a bit of a clue. So, I mean, Travis Kelce has obviously helped make that position what it is, and it's becoming a lot more noticeable. But again, if you ask me to name every tight end for every single team, I couldn't do it. Right, I couldn't name you the starting tight end or the starting running back for every side of the NFL. You can name the quarterback, you can name at least one of the wide receivers. So it's good that those guys come back, and then defensively, I think there are not many people care about the defense really in terms of, I think the defense becomes much more of a team game. If you are a great defensive team, right, the offense becomes more about the individual. It becomes more about the wide receivers. It becomes more about the quarterback. But the defensive unit, right? And they say great defenses win Super Bowls, right? Offense will win your games, defense will win your championships. Because of that, the individual players don't get talked about enough, right? And you look at someone like the Buffalo Bills as a great example of this. They have some fantastic players in defense. They don't really get talked about because everyone just talks about Josh Allen, right? So I think it's really interesting. Again, this article for ESPN actually mentioned a couple of Buffalo Bills. They mentioned Christian Bedford. They mentioned I think it's Rapp as well. They mentioned Taylor Rapp. So they mentioned a few players who in defense who are underrated and probably just don't get the attention or the love that they deserve.
Yeah, it's funny as you were saying that, I was thinking that's even how fantasy is. Now, those of you that play fantasy, and I don't want to brag, but I've won my fantasy league a few times now. But
yeah, it's at League One though. You've won the Across the Gridiron Championship every single season, and because I don't play,
But to your point, right? Even fantasy don't actually separate the defense, right? So the defense is seen as a unit, right? Irrespective of the players. So one player might get all the sack. It's the defense that has performed and gets the point. Compared to where you've got call outs in the other positions in the offense. Right. So the offense are the ones that are scoring the points that gets you up in fantasy. So maybe that's also a reflection, right? Excuse me, of what's going on where they don't get the same kind of acknowledgement. And it's interesting. Micah Parsons is going for a contract. He's probably going to be paid the most money for a non-quarterback, right? But he got into the league as a linebacker. But he very quickly knew that if he wants to get much money as he needs to, he probably needs to be identified as a pass rusher than a linebacker because he's going to get more money. He's going to get paid for pass rusher. So, yeah, it is very, very interesting. And maybe, this thing goes in cycles. maybe what just happened with Saquon Barkley might change. So we might see lots of teams giving money to running backs this season. But we'll
Hey,
see.
you never know. You never know. I think the one surefire way to get the respect you need in the UK if you're a defensive player is become a pundit. Because like in the UK, I think three of the most beloved pundits here in the UK, Osi Umenyiora,
Yeah,
defensive end,
yeah,
Jason Bell, he was a
yeah,
cornerback,
yeah,
and Adonai Sue,
yeah.
literally who you would not want to upset. I think it's fair to say. So that is clearly the best way to become rated is become an absolutely amazing pundit here in the UK. Then we'll love it. That's probably because we can't afford some of the best sort of quarterbacks to come over. Although to be fair, Fitzpatrick does come over and do the Super Bowl for Sky Sports here in the UK as well, and he was a good player.
Yeah, he does. He does. Fist magic does come around.
Fitzmagic. Oh, that beard. Oh, that.
I
So what?
know, right?
I was putting one of my daughters to bed tonight, and obviously I've got a little bit of stubble going on at the moment, and she said to me, "Daddy, I like your beard, but I wouldn't like a beard that goes all the way down, a big fluffy beard." But then I should tell her, look at this picture of Fitzpatrick. If he was your dad, you would be happy, right? If I could grow a beard like that, Sophie, you would absolutely love that. So,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Um,
I think that's probably just a good place to end this week.
it is. It is a good
Because
place to end this week.
I don't think we're going to do better than Fitzpatrick's
No,
beard.
we can. On that note,
On that note, well, look, guys, thank you for watching and tuning in. As always, great to talk through. We'll be back next week to talk through whatever Eddie thinks up over the course of the week. But for now, Eddie, take us home.
right. So listen, right. I know you might be disappointed if your team was on that list of teams that were disappointing. So chin up. If your quarterback has been underrated, maybe you need to shout about him a little bit more so that the media can take notice. But either way, the Tush Push is here to stay. As Matt has said, get behind it or get better at it. And remember, football is not a marathon. It's not a sprint, but it's exciting, right? I've completely lost what I was supposed to say.
So it's not a marathon. It's not a sprint. I think what you meant to say. It's the football season. It is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Exactly. I think that's what I was gonna say. I was like,
I've got to say, our outtakes. I mean, literally, I'm sure half our episodes just full of outtakes now. Last week we messed up the intro, and this week we're going to mess up the intro. If anybody's actually still watching it at this stage, that is. But
we're messing up the outro. So I was gonna say that football is not a sprint, but it is a marathon. And it's not how quickly you start the race as the Bengals, is really how you finish the race. So, but speaking of that,
it's exactly like this podcast. It's not how you finish. It's not how you start. It's how you finish it, Eddie.
Exactly, just like this podcast. So please hit that like and subscribe button. And more importantly, hit the notification button as well, because we love to hear from you as well. Hit the comment section as well. And a few of you have been hitting the comment section. So we really, really appreciate that. Until the next one, where we come back with some more laughter and a bit of brilliance, we promise you we will nail our intros and outros at some point. Let's
some
not
point.
about our next episode, but stay safe until the next one.
I'm the bad guy. I'm the